Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some seriously incredible stuff?
Absolutely. We're talking about the Israelites' conquest of the Promised Land. Specifically, we'll be looking at those amazing events described in Joshua chapters 9 through 12.
That's right, we've got epic battles, divine intervention, even a bit of trickery. What more could you ask for?
It's a truly fascinating period in history full of twists and turns, and we get to see the Israelites facing some impossible odds, making some really important decisions, and ultimately shaping the destiny of a nation.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The Israelites, led by Joshua, they're conquering Canaan city by city. They've already had some big wins, like at Jericho and Ai.
Right. And with those victories comes a growing reputation. You can imagine the fear among the people who haven't been conquered yet, people like the Gibeonites.
The Gibeonites, they weren't exactly warriors, were they?
Not at all. They lived in a cluster of cities not too far west of Ai, and they knew they were next. Just think about the terror they must have felt, the desperation, knowing that this powerful force was heading straight for them.
Yeah, it's almost like a psychological thriller, right? Facing complete annihilation. What would you do in that situation?
Well, the Gibeonites took a big gamble, a gamble that involved a whole lot of deception.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Instead of fighting, they came up with this plan to trick the Israelites, to convince them that they were actually travelers from a distant land, like way outside the borders of Canaan. So they dressed in rags, brought out some moldy bread, made it look like they had been on this long, hard journey, and they presented themselves to Joshua at Gilgal.
Moldy bread. Wait, you'd think someone would have been a little suspicious, right? Like, hey, maybe let's double check this whole story.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it seems the Israelites, maybe blinded by their recent victories, made a critical mistake.
What was that?
They didn't consult God.
Ah, right. Big mistake.
Yeah, before making this treaty with the Gibeonites, they saw what they wanted to see, accepted the story at face value, and made a binding oath with these so-called travelers.
So they get tricked. They figure out the truth. What happens then? I mean, they couldn't just go back on their word, could they?
No, they were bound by their oath. They couldn't attack the Gibeonites.
But they weren't just going to let them walk away, right?
Exactly. Instead, they made them servants, responsible for taking care of the Israelite community. Chopping wood, carrying water, things like that.
So the Gibeonites went from facing total destruction to becoming servants. Not exactly a happy ending for them, is it?
Not ideal, but I guess it shows their cleverness, right? They managed to survive against all odds.
They did. And you know what? Their deception had some pretty big consequences, not just for themselves, but for the entire region.
That's for sure. And this story, it still resonates with us today, don't you think?
Totally. It's a reminder to be careful, to not take things at face value, to do your research, get some advice before making big decisions.
Right.
So the Gibeonites, they're now allies with the Israelites, which makes them a target. There are other Canaanite kings who are not happy about this alliance at all.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about 5 Amorite kings who decided to team up and attack Gibeon.
The Amorites, they controlled a large portion of Canaan, right? A powerful group.
Absolutely. They saw this treaty, this alliance between the Gibeonites and the Israelites, as a betrayal, a direct threat to their own power. They weren't going to just sit back and watch it happen.
So 5 kings, furious, ready to unleash their armies. You can practically feel the tension building.
Right. What happens next?
Well, Joshua hears about the threat, and he doesn't hesitate. He acts decisively, leads his army on a night march to defend Gibeon.
Wow. Imagine that determination, the urgency. They knew these new allies were in danger, and they were committed to protecting them, no matter what.
I wonder how exhausted they must have been after marching all night. But they had a sense of duty, didn't they? A responsibility to protect their allies.
Absolutely. And so, the stage is set for a major confrontation.
2 armies clashing, the fate of Gibeon hanging in the balance.
But here's the incredible part. This battle, it unfolds in a way that defies expectations. God intervenes, and it's pretty amazing.
I think I've heard something about hailstones. Is that what you're talking about?
That's it. As the battle raged, God sent down this devastating hailstorm on the Amorite army.
Wow. Okay. Hailstones.
Yes. And the biblical account is very clear that the hailstones actually killed more of the enemy than the Israelite soldiers did.
Hold on. Hailstones were that deadly.
It's quite a vivid image, isn't it? And for the Israelites, it must have been a clear sign that God was on their side.
Yeah, definitely. But even with his divine intervention, the battle wasn't over, right?
No. They were facing a really formidable enemy, and Joshua knew he needed more time to achieve victory.
So divine backup, but still not enough. That's intense.
It is. And this is where we get to that incredible moment you mentioned earlier. Joshua, filled with faith and, well, boldness, he prays to God, and then he does something extraordinary.
He tells the sun to stand still, right?
Mhm.
He just commands the sun to stop in its tracks.
You're about to enter a whole new dimension of this story. Get ready for something truly miraculous. So the battle's raging on, the Israelites are giving it everything they've got, and Joshua, looking up at the sky, he says, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon."
Wait, he commands the sun to stop, as if it's like his own personal light switch.
Yeah,
That's got to be one of the most audacious things anyone has ever said.
it really is. And the Bible tells us that's exactly what happened. The sun just stopped right in the middle of the sky, gave the Israelites a whole extra day to defeat their enemies.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that would have been like. The
Yeah.
sun stopping for an entire day. It must have been absolutely awe-inspiring and terrifying and confusing all at the same time. Did everyone just like freeze in shock?
It definitely stretches the limits of what we think is possible. You know, for people who believe this account literally, it really shows the power of God.
Yeah.
A moment where the laws of nature were bent to his will.
Right.
But even if you see it more as a metaphor, it speaks to the power of faith. The belief that even when something seems impossible, it could still happen.
It definitely makes you think about how people understand these ancient stories. Some might take it literally as a historical event, and others see it as a powerful metaphor. A metaphor for overcoming obstacles, achieving victory against all odds.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got hailstones, we've got a sun that takes a break. What else happens in this action-packed part of the Bible?
Well, the victories keep coming. Chapters 11 and 12, they describe a whole bunch of conquests. Joshua leading the Israelites to triumph over one enemy after another.
So they're unstoppable at this point.
Pretty much.
God's on their side. They're feeling invincible. But, there must have been some close calls, right? Some battles that really tested them.
Oh, definitely. There's one that really stands out. Chapter 11 describes this massive battle against King Jabin of Hazor. This king, he had a huge army. We're talking soldiers as countless as the sand on the seashore, plus horses, chariots, the works. It was a terrifying force.
Wow, that's intense. I'd be shaking in my sandals. Did the Israelites ever have second thoughts? Like, everyone has their limits, right?
You would think. But again, God reassured Joshua, told him not to be afraid.
And did they listen?
They did. They trusted in God's promise and launched a surprise attack.
A surprise attack against an army that big. Bold move.
It was. And it worked. They completely overwhelmed their enemies and secured another decisive victory. Even facing an army that seemed impossible to defeat, their faith never wavered.
It's like there's a pattern here, The Israelites face this impossible challenge. God steps in and says, don't worry. They trust his guidance. And boom, victory. It all comes back to faith and obedience, doesn't it?
Exactly. The victories are always shown as a direct result of God's intervention and the Israelites' unwavering commitment to following his commands.
It's not military strategy. It's not brute strength.
It's all about their relationship with God, their faith in his promises.
Right. So at this point, they've won battle after battle, conquered kings. They even got the sun to pause for a coffee break. That's a lot to keep track of. Is there like a scoreboard, a list of achievements for the Israelites?
Well, that's what chapter 12 is all about. It's a victory list of sorts, detailing all the kings and territories that the Israelites conquered under Joshua's leadership. It's really impressive, the scale of what they achieved. It shows that God really did fulfill his promise to give them the land of Canaan.
It's amazing. It's like a testament to their faith and their perseverance. But it wasn't just about winning battles, was it?
No, it was about claiming their inheritance, fulfilling a destiny that had been promised to their ancestors generations ago.
That makes sense.
It was the fulfillment of a divine promise, a promise made to Abraham and his descendants that had been passed down for generations. These stories, they aren't just about battles and conquering land. They're about faith, obedience, and this deep connection between the Israelites and God.
I can see why these stories continue to fascinate people thousands of years later. History, adventure, faith, it's all in there. It's like a tapestry woven from all these different threads.
It really is. And it makes us think, what does it all mean? How do these stories apply to us today?
Exactly.
Some people view them as literal historical accounts. Others might see them as these powerful metaphors. Metaphors for overcoming obstacles and achieving victory in our own lives.
Right. We're not fighting armies and conquering cities these days, but we all face challenges in life. Challenges that require courage, resilience, maybe even a bit of faith.
That's a great point.
So whether we understand these stories literally or metaphorically, They teach us about human nature, about the power of belief, and the importance of staying connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. They remind us that even when the odds seem stacked against us, we can find strength. Strength in our beliefs, in our communities, and in the hope for a better future.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The Gibeonites' clever trickery, the incredible moment when the sun stood still, and this amazing series of victories led by Joshua.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. But I'm curious, what about the aftermath? What happens after all these battles, all the conquests? Did the Israelites finally get to enjoy some peace and quiet in the Promised Land?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's something for us to think about as we continue to explore this incredible narrative. The story of the Israelites, it doesn't just end with conquest and victory. There are new challenges ahead, internal conflicts to resolve, and the big task of building a new society in this land they fought so hard for.
It's not just about winning the battles. It's about what comes next. Building a lasting peace. Creating a just society. That's a message that still resonates today, don't you think?
It does. We may achieve victories in our own lives, but the real work often comes after, in rebuilding, in healing, in trying to create a better world for ourselves and for future generations.
Right. And that's where the true meaning of these ancient stories lies, isn't it?
I think so. They remind us that the journey isn't over after a single victory. It's about continuing to learn, to grow, to build something better, something stronger and more enduring.
It's amazing to think about everything the Israelites went through to reach the Promised Land. Their struggles, their victories, their incredible faith, and even those moments that, well, they kind of defy our understanding of how the world works.
It's a journey that's both inspiring and thought-provoking, wouldn't you say? It makes you think about your own beliefs, your values and the things that shape your life.
It really does. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious what stands out most for you. What's the biggest takeaway from these stories in Joshua chapters 9 through 12?
I think it's the reminder that even when things seem impossible, there's always hope. The Israelites, they faced so many challenges, but they always found strength in their faith, in their community, and in their belief that they were part of something bigger than themselves.
That's a powerful message. It's like having a compass to guide you through life, a sense of purpose that keeps you going even when things are uncertain.
Exactly, and it's a message that speaks to people across time and cultures. Whether you approach these stories from a religious perspective or just as a fascinating look at history, there's something everyone can relate to. Those themes of courage, resilience, and the pursuit of a better future.
The thing that really struck me was how bold Joshua was when he asked God to make the sun stand still. It's like this incredibly audacious act of faith. It makes you wonder, what if we all approached our own challenges with that level of belief?
That's a really interesting question to think about. What could we achieve if we truly believed that nothing was impossible? If we tapped into that inner strength, that connection to something greater than ourselves?
It's like we all have that potential inside us, this reservoir of strength and resilience. And these stories from the book of Joshua, whether we interpret them literally or metaphorically, they remind us of what we're capable of when we connect with something bigger than ourselves, something that gives our lives purpose and guides us.
I like that. And they encourage us to reflect on our own journeys, our own challenges, and the sources of strength that help us along the way.
So as we leave this ancient world behind and return to our own lives, it's important to remember that we're not alone in our struggles. We all have battles to fight, victories to celebrate, and stories to tell.
And just like the Israelites, we have a choice to make. We can choose faith over fear, act with courage and determination, and work towards a future full of hope and possibility.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the book of Joshua. We hope you've learned something new, that we've sparked your curiosity, and maybe even helped you tap into that ancient spirit of courage and faith.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep believing in the power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle.